Good morning. I hope you're getting my screen and as well as my voice. So, if you observe on Friday class, right? So, basically, we're discussing on data disks. Uh, this data disk concept. So, just I mentioned that in which we are storing the data that is except C drive. So, if you observe, well, whenever if you're installing some new OS or if you're configuring some new operating system in your respective laptops, right? So, basically, we are partitioning the disks based upon the total space. So, if you're having some 1 terabyte of 1 terabyte as a space, right? So we can partition into maybe some 4 disk or 5 disk. So depends upon your requirement, right? So here also same thing, we're having some data disk. So if you want to add some extra amount of space or into your respective virtual machines, whether it is on Windows or Linux, we're having a concept called as a data disk. So except C drive, so whatever the things which you are calling as a data disk, just we are going to store some data. That's it. Okay. So, and we have implemented the same concept, this data disk concept in Windows point of view, but we are somewhere we are stuck at in Linux point of view on Friday, right? So that thing just we are going to continue uh, on Linux mission point of view basically. Okay. So first of all, we need to create some this resource group, regional network and sub network, and then it is followed by some Linux machine. But here, while creating this virtual machine, if you observe in Windows point of view, so we have an option called as an disks, right? While creating the virtual machine, so there we are selecting some standard SSD, and within that, in the same page, if you go to somewhat below, so you're going to find some create a data disk, something like that. We're having some option called as a create a data disk. So there you need to create some extra data disk or extra space, how much amount of space you want basically, right? So same thing it is false for same thing it is for Linux virtual machine as well. Okay. So let me create some resource group first of all. So maybe some Linux resource group. So next tags, next we will create. Finally click on create. So then we need to create some virtual network. Go to virtual network here. Click on create. Linux RG. Maybe some Azure test underscore VG virtual network. VN, sorry. Next IP address. So 10.11.0.0/16. Subnet Azure test underscore subnet 10.11.1.0/24. Click on add. So next security, next tags, next we can create, and finally click on create. So it is created. So next we need to create some virtual machine. Click on create. So select the resource group. There is nothing but Linux RG. So maybe some Linux machine one. So we're going with some Ubuntu. Go with password. click on none. Next disks. So here you need to select some standard SSD. So here this is the option which you want to go with. Some if you want to implement some data disks concept for the respective virtual machine, yeah, basically. Okay, so create and attach a new disk. You can give any name. Here I'm going with 16 GB basically. Okay, so click on OK. Click on OK once again. Click on next networking. So select the respective virtual network and subnet. Basically we're having a single virtual network, right? So by default it is going to select subnet. We have created some subnet, right? We did not get subnet. We're having subnet. Maybe the creation of this virtual network subnet may be late while we are creating the virtual machine. That may be the reason. Okay, so we'll try it once again. So select the standard SSD, create attach new disk, select 16 GB, click on OK. So next networking, it is taking default. While Linux RG, Azure test -VM. Linux RG. HTS. Also HTS. HTS only. It is taking default virtual network and default subnet. So let me delete it. So I'm going with some SQS. So next tags, next you can create. Finally click on create. So next we need to create some virtual networks. Click on create. Select the resource group, that is Azure test. Azure test hyphen vnet. So next IP address 10.12.0.0/16 Azure test hyphen subnet 10.12.1.0/24. Click on add. Next security. Next tags. Next we will create. Finally click on create. So Azure test. So next disks, go with standard SSD. Create, attach a new disk, 16 GB. Click on OK. Click on OK. So next networking. So now we have got it. Okay. So sometimes, so maybe for a specific reason we are not able to create Linux machines. It may be happen sometimes. Okay, not frequently. So next management, go with disable advanced tags. We can create. Finally click on create. Sorry. So go to the respective virtual machine, just add the inbound security role. Here on the ports, click on add. So try to log in with by using putty. So copy this IP address, click on accept. So go to root user. So here, as I mentioned you here, Linux point of view, everything is a command based, right? So first of all, if you want to know how many number of data disks is available within this specific to this virtual machine, right? We're having a command called as lsblk. Okay. So now if you observe here, uh, in this mount point column, right? So if you're having some folders or maybe some subfolders, something like this, right? Slash mnt, so that specific, or if you're finding even slash Azure, right? So that specific data disk is already allocated uh, with some data or with some files, something like that. Okay. But if you are finding something, right? So if you observe here, sta is nothing but what we can call as a parent, and these are the subfolders. So in these subfolders, if in this respect to specific to mount point column, if you're having something like this means, so it is I mean that the data disk is allocated with some data, simply we can say that, or it is allocated for uh, some files, or it is already associated with some information. Okay. But here if you observe this HTTP, right? So this is nothing but 16 GB, and it is not allocated. So this is nothing but what we have added just now for this respect to Linux machine, basically. Okay. Just now we have created as well. So just for this Linux mission 1, right? So in the data disk option, we have attached a new data disk, right? So that is with the size of 16 GB. So this is the one which is, if you observe, specific to this respect to mount point column, it is not allocated, basically. Okay. So now if you want to format this disk, right? Or if you want to allocate to or if you want to allocate a specific space for this respect 16 GB, or if you want to what we can say is, so if you want to mount point, right? So just we need to format the disk. So for this, fdisk space slash div, and whatever the name we're having, here we're having is stb, right? stb, click on enter, click on enter, click on n, enter the n here, click on enter, click on enter, click on enter, click on enter. Okay, so just once if you type some n here, so you need to click on 4 enters. So once if these things is done, so nothing but it is what doing is it is partitioning the respect to data disk, what are the data disk which I have given here, nothing but stb. Okay, so once if these things is done, so you need to save these changes. So for this you need to enter w. Okay, once again click on the enters, enter. See here, so the partition table has been altered, so synchronization of these disks. So now it is done basically. Okay, formatting the disk is done basically. So, and as I mentioned you, each and every operating system is having its own file system. So if you observe this Windows, basically is having some NTFS as a one file system. So in Windows point of view, explicitly you no need to mention any file system. So by default it is going to take automatically. But it is not the case with the Linux operating system here. Okay. So once if you format the disks, so you need to whatever the disk which I have created, what are the data disks which I have created. Here we are having some STB, right? For this STB also we need to create a file system as well. So for this, we run command called as an mkfs, nothing but make file system dot ext4. So what is the data disk folder name? So there is nothing but stb. Okay, click on enter. Enter y. Okay, so once these things is done, so just I want to make some directory, I want to store some data. If you want to do it, you can do it. Okay, so just I want to mkdir, so it is a 16 GB, right? Slash 16 GB volume something. Now we need to mount slash dev slash sta, right? stb, sorry, stb slash 16 GB volume. Okay, so now if you type some lsblk, see here, this specific data disk, it is mounted with some directory. Okay, so here what are the things we need to do basically. So first of all, if you want to know a specific data disk is formatted or not, or it is allocated with some space or not, so just you need to check with this mount point column. So if whatever the data disk which you have added, that is nothing but stb, right? So it does not have any directory or any folder within this mount point column. So we can say that this data disk is not allocated with some space. So for this, so what we need to do first of all, so we need to format the disk, that is fdisk space slash dev, whatever the data disk name which you are having, that is the respective data disk name. So just is going to format the disks. Okay, so here this stb is the first time we are formatting, so that is the reason we need to give the here if you observe, we have provided some n, and n stands for new. Okay, So then you need to click on some enters. So just it is going to allocate some partitions for this respective disk. So once these things is done, again we're going to get some command M for help. So just here what are the operations which I have done here. So these things just we want to save. So for this we need to provide some W. So just it is going to save all these things basically. So once if these things is done, once this formatting or formatting the existing data disk is done, so just we need to create a file system for that specific to data disk. So that is MKFS, nothing but make a file system. Here ext4 is nothing but a one of the type of the file system. Okay, so here we're having some different file systems falls under the Linux operating system. Here ext4 is one of the file system, one type of the file system here. So like ext3 is one more file system. I mean these are the types of file system, what we can say that. Here ext4 is the one of the type, simply we can say that. Okay, slash dev, what are the data disk name, so that thing we need to provide. Okay, so proceed anyway as. So just it is going to allocate some blocks here. So then what are the data disk which are having, so that thing just I am allocating, I want to mount to some directory. So for this mkdir, so just we are making a directory and we are mounting to that specific directory here. Okay, so finally if you cross check these things, so this data disk is mounted to this specific directory 16 GB wall. Okay, so any doubts here, any of you, any doubts? Swati, Narasimha, Jagdish, Ramesh. Okay, so basically, here if you observe, let us assume if you are existing from this specific session. Okay, this it is currently is in one session, right? So let us assume if you are exist, if you type some exit command, or if you are, we can say that out of this respective putty console, let us assume, right? So once again if you log into this specific to this respective virtual machine by using this putty console. Okay, and if you type some ls what we call lsblk, right? So this is, here you're going to get some you're going to have some empty folder, or we can say that this stb hard disk or stb data disk is not mounted with any of the directories. Okay, so the reason is basically here what are the changes we have done, right, or what are the process which I have done till now. So it is a temporary this we have executed some mount command, right, basically. So these changes is nothing but a temporary changes here basically. Okay, so these things, otherwise this data disk, what are the things which is mounted 16 GB wall. So until this session we are closing, or until we are existing from this respective putty console, so this mounting, what are the mounting which I have done for this specific directory, it will be there basically. Once if you are existing from this specific to once if you are out of this respective putty console, so these changes will not be reflected to the when once again if you are logged into the new virtual machine here. Once again if you are trying to log into the respective virtual machine. Okay, so now if you want to make these changes as a permanent, so we need to execute a one more step basically, that is nano slash. Otherwise what we can do is, so try to exit. Okay, so let me log into once again, go to putty, click on open. So go to root user, lsblk. See here. So currently it is a permanent only. Okay, but sometimes it will not be made as a permanent. So it will be as a temporary changes only. What are the previous process which I have done, right? So if that is the case, basically, or you can cross check it once again. So just restart this respective Linux machine, right? So it will not take these changes here. It will not mount it to this respective directory. Okay, sometimes definitely it is going to be happen. So if you want to make these changes as a permanent, we're having a one more command called as nano. So nano is just to open some specific file, right? So slash etc slash fs tab. So here what we need to do is, so just you need to copy this entire one. Here this mount command which I have already specified, right, in the previously, the same thing we need to provide here, slash now sda, right, sda space slash 16 GB, what is the directory 1, right, I think we have given, paste it here. Okay, so then control s and control x. These are the now permanent, this what are the things which are done till now, these are the permanent changes now. Even though if you have restarted this Linux machine, right, or even if you refresh this respective Linux machine in this respective UI, right, or once again if you have started what you have stopped this respective Linux machine and once again you have restarted this Linux machine, if anything is done, these changes are permanent now. Okay, because of this respective command. That is the one more thing. Okay, so any doubts here, any of you? Sujit Narasimha, uh, whoever, Ramesh.
Is this the only way to make a changes permanent, or is there any other way to make the changes permanent?
Sorry, your voice is not audible.
Is this the only way to make the changes permanent, or is there any other
No,
way?
no, this is the only way. So now here, if you, yes, Sujit,
Yeah, thanks, thanks.
yes. So now here, if you want to add a one more data disks, right? So here you can attach. So if you observe in this Windows point of view, what I have done basically, while creating virtual machine, we have added a new data disk, right? So after that, we have done some changes. I mean, we have logged into the respective virtual machine, and we have done with some changes, right? So then only what are the data disks which I have added while creating the virtual machine, it is allocated with some space, basically, right? So once these changes is done, so let us assume after creating a virtual machine, so if you want to add a new data disk, right? What I have done in the Windows point of view, we have gone to this settings option where we have gone to some disks, and here we have attached the new data disk, right? In Windows point of view, same thing it will be applied for Linux machine as well. So here you can attach a new data disk, so with whatever the size you want, right? And the same process we need to repeat here. What are the process which are applied till now, what are the steps which are included, I mean we have checked with lsblk, right, and then we have format the disk, and we have created a new, and we have if you want to save the changes, we have entered the w, right, and then we have created some file system, and we have created some directory, and we have mounted that respective directory to the uh, respective data disk, right? The same comments we need to apply. So if you added the new data disk here, basically, okay. So that thing you can apply the same. So if something is, if something is not working for you, let me know, okay. So that's all for today, basically.